All right, so we're here on another special Couch Coach Live. We got a great show lined up for you tonight. We're gonna do some NFL draft recap. We got a guest in the building. We got our guy Brad from the Pint Glass Football Podcast. What's going on, Brad? How you doing?
Hey, good, good. Really appreciate you having me on the show. Excited to talk some NFL draft with you. Yeah, this has definitely been an exciting draft that just got finished up, and excited to take a deep dive here with you.
Yes, absolutely. So, what was your overall thoughts on the draft? Just this 3 day unofficial holiday that is the NFL draft.
Well, I know for me in my show, we do a whole bunch of NFL draft coverage. So we've been doing a bunch of draft episodes leading up to it, had a whole bunch of guests on and really taking a look at these prospects in depth. And it's just a lot of fun. You know, this is one of the funnest things in the off season as far as any sport, in my opinion. I absolutely love the draft. It's just so fun to watch these guys go from the college game to the next, going to the next rank here at the NFL, seeing where they go and how they're going to fit into these offenses and defensive schemes. I just think it's a lot of fun. I thought the broadcast as well was just fantastic. I thought Roger Goodell bringing the chair out, I thought that was kind of funny and kind of a cool thing to do with the fans and everything. And, we're getting further removed from the COVID pandemic. I know we're still in the midst of it, but it was nice to see fans. It was nice to kind of have some of that regularity back, seeing the fans. Yeah, there were masks and all that stuff, but it was cool just to see it on TV again. It felt normal, so to speak. So for me, it was just a lot of fun, and I couldn't get away from it, to be honest. I was watching every round in depth, as I'm sure you were.
Yeah, and the beauty thing about it was you had three different, and I think they do a great job now with the simulcast, where they, you can do the ESPN broadcast, NFL Network broadcast, then the ABC that gives you that college feel. And I was really tuned into the college one. I think they give you more of an in-depth analysis as far as the college athletes. And like you said, I just love the fact, like, when you watching the pregame of it, and they, these guys are having shows outside of the stadium, and you're seeing like a crowd of people, and you're like, wow, this is, I haven't seen this in quite some time. So that was definitely, like you said, it was just a great feel. And just seeing the audience, and then just seeing like people in the building, versus definitely compared to last year where we all had a front row seat to Roger Goodell's basement, and yeah, now we're here and definitely enjoyed it, and then even the Rams, their room, and they had a picture of Roger Goodell on their wall. So I thought it was just cool. The draft was just very cool, and definitely better than what it was last year.
Yeah, it certainly was. And the Roger Goodell portrait was, I didn't know what to make of that. I mean, it was kind of hilarious, but at the same time, you almost kind of wondered, like, did they put that up just for this draft, or does he really have that up on his wall? Like, I'd love to know the answer to that. But yeah, it was really cool, man. It was fun to see. It was fun to see the hugs and the high fives, and there felt like there was more juice. And I know it had to be because the fans were there, but I mean, those fans were like decked out, man. It was like playoff atmosphere almost. It was crazy to see that much energy, even for a draft. We knew it was going to be big, but it had a really big feel. And I think it's because we all kind of took it for granted. And then all of a sudden, when it wasn't here last year, it was like so exciting to have it back and normal again.
I know. And it was definitely a great 3 days. I think it should be a official holiday. I think we should just carve that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and just tell every football person in America, fan in America, just take 3 days off and enjoy these festivities. But
so yeah, I'm with you. It's a holiday at my house. I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely. That most indefinitely. Same here as well. So who were your biggest winners in this NFL draft?
Well, there was a few teams that I thought did really well. I thought the Dolphins had a really nice draft, but the team for me that I think was really the big winner is the LA Chargers. And when you look at what they did in this draft, they start out with their first pick and they get Rashaan Slater, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. This was a home run pick. And I think he's easily the second best offensive lineman in this class. And the fact that they didn't have to trade up and give up any draft capital to get this guy, I thought was outstanding. I had him as as my 8th best prospect on my big board. I think that he's not quite to the level of Penei Sewell, but this is still a very, very good prospect. And I know we live in this modern fantasy football world where it seems like every fan wants their team to take a flashy wide receiver or a big time playmaker, running back and stuff. And those guys are great. Don't get me wrong, but the game is still won or lost in the trenches. And this is a huge pick for this franchise because this was a team that had one of the lowest graded offensive lines in the NFL last season as far as pass blocking. And that's with Justin Herbert, their franchise quarterback that they landed, the offensive rookie of the year. He was able to put up those numbers behind that bad of an offensive line is kind of astonishing. Now you're going to plug in a true left tackle, a dominant player at Northwestern. I mean, Slater is a prototypical offensive tackle for the NFL, 6'4", 304. He dominated Chase Young 2 years ago while he was at Ohio State. I mean, this guy is that good. And we saw what Chase Young did, winning Defensive Rookie of the Year and just tearing up the NFL last season. This is a guy who's very, very polished. He really is going to come in and be a plug-and-play starter from day one, a absolute technician. He's got great hands, great feet. He just checks every single box that you're looking for in a starting NFL tackle. And then if you go into the second round, they filled another huge need for me on this team by taking Asante Samuel Jr., the cornerback out of Florida State. I thought that was another just home run pick for them and really an absolute steal at number 47. I was shocked that this guy was available. I think he really slid in this draft. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it was the size at only 5'10", and his speed is not what you would consider maybe elite, but this is a really, really good player. I mean, this is another guy that I think is going to be a day one starter. And the more I look at the tape and watch this guy, he has NFL DNA. We know that. His dad, of course, played in the league for a long time. So he's got a really high football IQ. He's an instinctive player. He's got great balance, body control, ball skills. He just showed so much skill on tape. And when you look at the two needs that they really needed a lineman and a secondary piece. They needed these two positions and they hit these picks out of the park. So for me, this was an absolute awesome draft for the Chargers. If you're a fan of the LA Chargers, you've got to be just excited of what they did in this draft class.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely like, that pick with, because it's funny because it's weird how the draft was going to play out, like as far as the mock drafts. I thought San Diego wasn't going to be able to get him at 13 because I always figured, like, I always had a thought, a premonition in the beginning, like Carolina's going to get Slater. For some odd reason, I had that feeling, but luckily he fell into their laps. Also, another guy they got that I'm really interested in is Chris Rump, the second. I think he's going to be kind of an interesting one. He's another kind of one. And we talk about Asante Samuel, who's a son of as far as Asante's, as far as his father being in the NFL, and then Chris Rump's father is actually been a college coach for almost damn near a decade, almost more than a decade at this point. So these guys, have as far as that pedigree. But yeah, I definitely like what the Chargers did, and definitely that key thing was to got to protect Justin Herbert. He's your franchise.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head, and I agree with you. And they brought in a lot of guys like that, guys who had high football IQs, guys who are coming in as polished prospects. I think sometimes when you watch the NFL draft, you see a lot of these prospects who are getting a little bit hyped up because of their measurables or the things they did at their pro day or their 40 times. We look at their athleticism, we go, man, look at the talent, but they're not always the most polished, ready to play prospects. They just have a lot of upside. I like what the Chargers did, bringing in guys that can help them right now, guys that are going to be ready to play day one. And so I thought they did an outstanding job of filling those needs, but finding really smart, savvy, polished prospects. I just thought it was outstanding by them to fill those needs and find the right players. And like I said earlier, and not giving up draft capital to do it. I thought they really let the draft come to them, and it was just an outstanding job by their GM in this scouting group for LA.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's your biggest winner. Your loser. Who's your biggest loser in this draft?
For me, I almost feel bad saying it because people who follow my podcast know this is a team I've really beat up on in the last couple of years. And it's not by choice. I don't have anything against them, but I just hate their draft for the third year in a row. The Las Vegas Raiders. This is a team that I just continue to scratch my head when I watch them make these picks. Like I said, 3 years in a row, I feel like they made a big reach for a player in the first round. They did it again this year by taking Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from Alabama. Now, he's a good player. I don't want to make it sound like he's a scrub. He's a good player, but he's a 6'5", 312-pound guy. He's got the size, and he has a lot of big-time experience in the SEC. He's a sound run blocker, and he's pretty good in pass protection. But this is a guy who really struggled against faster edge rushers. If you watch those guys, those really twitchy guys that can bend the edge, he had a really hard time against some of those players in the SEC. And I think because he just doesn't have very quick feet, he doesn't have that quick reaction that you like to see from an NFL tackle. And I don't think that's really something you can teach. If it was one of those things where, hey, he just needs to work on his hand placement or he needs to work on some technical things, then I could maybe see making a pick like this. But I don't really know how you make a guy quicker. That's a tough ask for a guy. So really, when you look at him, he struggled to handle those guys consistently. And I think that's why most draft analysts, when they were breaking down his game, and myself included, I think he's better suited to play guard. And I get that they needed offensive line help. This was a position of need for them. So I understand the pick. But by taking a guy who probably can't play tackle at the next level at 17 overall, we got to remember, this is a fairly high pick here. And a guy that most people ranked as a second or even third round prospect, you take him at 17, man, to me, that is just a huge, huge reach. And there were so many talented players that were still on the board at 17. I just think it was by far the worst pick of the first round. When I look at the rest of their draft, I do like their second round pick, Trayvon Morig, the safety from TCU, I should say. He was the number 20 ranked player on my big board. I thought he was a fantastic pick, really great value for where they got him. I thought he was by far their best pick. I thought he was a first round talent. So I'm a big fan of what they did in the second round. But when you look at the rest of this draft for them, the Raiders then went on to draft two more safeties in Divine Diablo and Tyree Gillespie. And both of these guys were also big reaches for where they took them. And you're going to take three safeties? I mean, I know the secondary was bad, but three safeties. I just didn't understand what their direction was for this draft. I'm not really sure what the game plan was here for the Raiders. The Raiders had one draft pick that I liked, and they needed offensive line help in a major way after losing three starters on the offensive line. But they really didn't do anything to address it outside of that one pick in Leatherwood, which was a huge reach. So for me, this was just a really poor draft by the Raiders.
Yeah, and the funny thing about and what was weird, like you're saying, going back 3 years, we think about guys like Cleveland Farrell in 2019, how they went up just. And what I found funny was I think they should have took a cue from teams that were in that same spot. When you look at like when Dallas moved down, Minnesota moved down, and you got to think to yourself like. Because at that time, Vera Tucker was off the board. You still had Dershaw there as well. So a part of me could have, like, if you really wanted Leatherwood, you could have got a team to trade up to that 17 spot and get some additional picks. Because he could have been available for you, like you said. It could have been. He might have been there Friday evening for you. Much less than to kind of get up to that point. And that's the thing about that. I just thought that was really weird where I think out of all teams that traded down, they should have been the one that should have traded down.
I think that's a great point, and I think you're right. And I like what you said about Dershaw because I was pretty high on Dershaw. I think he's a guy who's going to be a really good player, and I think he's a guy who's actually better suited to be a starting left tackle. And this, with Leatherwood, I'm not sure he's a tackle. And so really at that point, you're taking a guy that's a guard at 17. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And this was a deep offensive lineman class, and especially at guard. I mean, there was a lot of really good guards that went later in this draft. So I didn't understand the direction. They must be thinking that this kid is a starting tackle in their minds. That's got to be their thinking on this, because otherwise I just don't understand how they think that this is a good value pick. And I agree with you completely. I would have traded back because I don't think there's any doubt he would have been there. And like you said, he probably would have been there in the second, and he might have even been there in the third. But even if you love him, let's say you have a really high grade on him, if you love him, you could still wait into the second and get him. And so I think it would have been smart to get some more picks, move back, and they could have got him. It just wasn't very savvy by the Raiders at all.
Absolutely. So prediction time. So now, as far as who do you see at this point, I know it's always going to change, but this is kind of more so like a knee-jerk prediction at this point. So who do you see at this point, May 2nd of 2021, as the offensive rookie of the year?
For me, I took a good look at this and started thinking about guys, because you have to look at outside of just talent. You have to look at situations, because you really got to look at who's in a good situation to produce, on top of being a high-level talent. And for me, the guy who checks both those boxes is Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida. He went number 4 overall to the Atlanta Falcons, the highest-rated tight end in the modern draft era. And it's for a reason, because anybody that watched some tape of this guy, he just jumps off the TV screen. He is that dominant of a player. And for me, he was the number 3 player on my board. I actually think he's one of the very few players in this draft, along with Trevor Lawrence and Penei Sewell, that I said on my podcast are the only true can't miss guys. Those are the only 3 players in this draft. And that's nothing against Jamar Chase or some of these other players. I think there was a lot of good players at the top of this draft. But those are the 3 guys that I felt like it doesn't matter where they went. It doesn't matter who their coach is or what system, and then they are going to be dominant players. And Kyle Pitts is that guy. He's just such a stud, man. When you watch him, he's going to line up everywhere in this new offense from Arthur Smith. They're going to line him up inside, outside. He's going to run the seam, the out routes. I mean, this guy can really do it all. He's 6'6" with a 4.4 40-yard dash speed. That is just not fair. You just don't see guys like this every day. It's completely ridiculous. And he didn't drop a single ball at Florida last year. I mean, you want to talk about an unbelievable talent. But what I really like about his chances to win Offensive Rookie of the Year is, like I said, the situation he's going into. Matt Ryan can still sling it. This guy might be on the back 9 of his career, but this guy can still play at a high level. And when you've got a quarterback who can spread the ball around and get you in good situations, and you combine that with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley on the outside, it's going to be really tough for teams to focus in on Kyle Pitts, and that's going to leave him in a lot of good situations, a lot of one-on-one situations. He's too big for safeties. He's too big for cornerbacks. He's too fast for linebackers. He's a mismatch nightmare, man. This is a guy who's going to have 1,000 yards and probably 8 or more touchdowns. He's going to be a monster.
Yeah. And it's definitely going to be definitely a dynamic weapon for the Atlanta's offense as well. So, defensive rookie of the year, who you got?
You know, this one is interesting because defensive rookie of the year is generally a player that's taken high in the draft. It's usually a guy who's kind of got a lot of notoriety coming out, and it's a guy that writers and analysts are paying attention to early. So usually your defensive rookie of the year is not going to be a second rounder or a third round guy. It's usually going to be one of these top picks. And for me, the guy that really jumps out is Micah Parsons, the linebacker at Penn State, went 12th overall to Dallas. He was the best defensive player in this draft, and I don't think it's really debatable. For me, he was the number 6 player on my big board. Unbelievable talent, incredible athletic ability. He ran a 4.3 40-yard dash at his pro day. That's like cornerback speed. That's elite speed, man. And you're talking about a linebacker with cornerback speed. It's just freakish what he can do. Amazing range. This guy can cover so much ground. He can close in on players so fast. He can blitz the quarterback. He wraps up. He's a sure tackler. He's a stat stuffer. If you look at what he did at Penn State, now he sat out last season, so you have to go back to 2019. This guy had 109 tackles, 14 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks, and 5 pass breakups. And like I said, this award is generally going to be a high level prospect that people are paying attention to. And it's an award that's mostly stat based. And so this is a guy who's going to fill up the stat sheet week in and week out for Dallas. He's the perfect linebacker for today's NFL. Just a do-it-all guy who can stop the run, cover the tight end. He can cover running backs out of the backfield. Such a dynamic player, unbelievable player, and really a steal for the Cowboys at 12. He's another guy, a lot like Rashaan Slater. I'm shocked slid out of the top 10. I think he had top 5, top 6 kind of talent. And for him to be there, I think it was an outstanding pick by him. And if you look at Vegas, they have him as the favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year for a reason. And I'm with them.
Yeah. And it's funny. And we talked about earlier as far as they traded down because obviously Horn and Surtain was already taken off the board. And then, like you said, to get to that point and get the best linebacker in this draft it's another thing where, it definitely was a steal for Dallas. And that's the thing where with him, and, a lot of people were saying, well, did they really need a linebacker? But yeah, they do need a linebacker. I mean, you get him. It doesn't matter if you have somebody else there as well. You just grab the best available. And that's why you look at most of these teams has been, as far as when we look at the Kansas Cities, Tampa Bays, San Francisco, they base it on who was best available at that particular time and create that depth. And I definitely think this was a value pick for Dallas.
I think it was, but I also think it fills a need because we know that Dallas's defense was terrible. I mean, it was one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL. So they needed a playmaker just about anywhere on the defense. And to take the best player, like you said, available on the defense side of the ball, I think was kind of a no-brainer. But also, Sean Lee retired, and Van Der Esch is a guy, as good as he is, he misses a lot of games with injury. So linebacker still is a spot where they could definitely use some help. And I just think it became a no-brainer. It's a little shocking because when I was watching the draft live and the Giants were sitting there at 11 and Micah Parsons is still on the board, I'm thinking this has to be the pick. They need linebacker help. This is just the perfect home run. There's no way he should have slid this far. I'm thinking New York's got to take him, right? And they trade out of that spot. And I thought, oh, man, that might come back to haunt him. And I think it will, because for him to go in division to the rival Dallas Cowboys, this could be one that stings for a long time to come, because I think this is a guy who's going to be an absolute stud from day one and be playing in a lot of Pro Bowls, man.
Yeah, I know. And it's one thing, it's gonna link to the rivalry. You look at now, like we can compare to, Devontae Smith's career, Micah Parsons' career, and it's just gonna add another layer to the NFC East rivalries. And it's definitely gonna be a interesting storyline to follow those two guys' careers.
Yeah, no, you're certainly right. And I thought it was interesting that the Eagles went up and made that selection. I thought that was fascinating. The draft as a whole was fascinating. But yeah, the NFC East, there was some interesting picks, man. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens. Now, granted, I think the Giants still had a pretty good draft. I really do. But that was one place where I was like, I don't know. You might regret passing on this guy, because they had a chance to get a really special talent there. And I understand they got a lot of value as far as trading back. They got some extra picks, and those picks could turn out to be really valuable down the road. But this might be one, if Micah Parsons looks like I think he's going to look in Dallas and he comes away with the hardware for Rookie of the Year, Giants fans might be sitting there going, what were we doing here? Well, why didn't we take him when he was sitting on the board for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just a very fantastic weekend. So we'll put a bow on this draft recap. Definitely appreciate you for coming through, Brad. Where can they find you on social media?
Yeah. Hey, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun talking some draft with you. And yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PGF Podcast. The show is on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Alexa. I mean, you name it. It's pretty much everywhere you can find it. But yeah, Pint Glass Football Podcast. I hope some of your listeners come and check it out. And yeah, we'll have to do it again, man. Hit me up anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely have you back on around. We definitely gonna circle the wagon and have you back on. And definitely appreciate you, man. And this has been a special edition of Couch Coach Live, and we recap the draft. And once again, thank you again, Brad, for stopping through. And we'll catch you on the next episode.